Let's talk a little bit about the consequences associated with a 90-day immediate roadside prohibition in British Columbia. The consequences associated with the prohibition aren't just what's written on the face of the prohibition document. Obviously, you're going to have the $500 fine, the 90-day driving prohibition, and a 30-day vehicle impoundment. But what you may not know is that the cost associated with towing and storage for the vehicle is charged to you. You are required to pay those fees. They are set by regulation in British Columbia, meaning the tow yards can only charge a certain amount per day based on where the tow yard is, but there are no similar restrictions as far as the towing. If your vehicle is a special vehicle that requires a flat deck or some sort of a dolly, or the keys are not located and they need to do extra steps to get the vehicle onto the tow, you will be charged additional fees for all of that. This can mean that the tow bill and the associated impound costs can sometimes exceed $1,000. And if you do not pay that, there is law in British Columbia that permits the tow yard operators to claim your vehicle and sell it as salvage, notwithstanding the fact that it's registered to you based on the unpaid debt to the tow yard. That's a significant financial circumstance that a lot of people are facing as a result of a 90-day IRP, and one that they don't often plan for when they're planning around the different consequences that they could get. Another one of the significant consequences that's not on the face of the document is that you have to have a $250 license reinstatement fee at the time that you renew your license. This is a fee that ICBC charges to anybody who gets a driving prohibition and has to go into ICBC to reinstate their license. That's not the only financial penalty you're going to pay at ICBC besides the fine. There's also something known as a short-term license administration fee. Despite the fact that you might be a valid Class 5 driver upon reinstating your license, you are no longer going to be permitted to have a 5-year renewable license. For most people, if your license expires, you go into ICBC, you renew your license, the next time it expires is 5 years later. But for people who get 90-day immediate roadside prohibitions, they are given only a 2-year renewable license, meaning that they have to go into ICBC and pay the renewal fee in 2 years instead of 5. And for the privilege of having to pay an extra fee sooner in relation to your license, you also have to pay this short-term license administration fee, which is $31. So right away there, just the fines related to the ICBC side of things works out to $781. Factor in about $1,000 for the impound, and you're now up to $1,781 for most 90-day immediate roadside prohibitions. But the consequences do not stop there. In addition to all of those fines and penalties and the towing and storage of the vehicle, you are also required for any 90-day immediate roadside prohibition that you receive to complete the BC Responsible Driver Program. This is essentially an alcohol and driving education course that is required to be completed within a year. What happens after you complete your 90 days is at some point you will receive a letter in the mail with a referral to the course. There is no rhyme or reason to when ICBC sends these letters. Some people get them during the 90 days and can register for the course while they're still serving the time. Some people get them after the 90 days, a couple weeks later after they've reinstated their licenses. And some people don't get them for months after they've reinstated their license. Regardless of when you get the letter, you can still reinstate your license when the 90 days are up, provided you pay the fees and there's no outstanding debts to ICBC, and provided that if you have received your referral letter, you have paid for and registered for the Responsible Driver Program. You are required to register for the program within 45 days of the date listed on the letter. And then you have 1 year from the date of your registration to complete the program. For a lot of people in a lot of places in British Columbia, this can be very difficult because this consequence requires that you attend a class, which may not be offered in your area very often. People who live in remote or northern communities have less opportunities to take the Responsible Driver Program than people who live in the Lower Mainland or on Vancouver Island. And as a result of that, classes can become full, or you may not be available due to work or family commitments on the days within that 1 year. This essentially sets up a two-tiered system. People who have more access to more resources in the Lower Mainland, the Okanagan, and Vancouver Island are more likely to get to keep their licenses than people who are in more remote locations. It's unfair. But to make matters worse, the cost of the program is high. It is approximately $1,400 to register for this program, and that's another expense that you have to plan for, despite the fact that you're not going to know when that expense is going to hit you. This, after adding those $1,400 to the $1,700, brings the cost of the immediate roadside prohibition to well over $3,000. It's a significant financial penalty. And the responsible driver program as well was recently changed. It used to be offered by a company called Stroh Healthcare, and it cost around $850 plus tax. But the government changed the service provider for the program and is now offering it through CMHC, which increased the cost almost 1.5 times as much. That's a huge jump in cost that people should not have to pay. If the program was capable of being administered by another company that was doing it cheaper, the government shouldn't find a new service provider that charges a significant amount more for this essentially the same content. A lot of people who've taken the responsible driver program feel that it's a bit of a ripoff because the program itself is really just a Zoom meeting and some timeframes that you have to complete some work in within that Zoom meeting. There are also different iterations of the responsible driver program, depending on your driving record and your pre-program interview, which is conducted by telephone. You will be referred to either an 8-hour or a 16-hour version of the program. One would be one Saturday, whereas the other would be 2 days out of your life. That means 1 or 2 days that you're not working, and that means 1 or 2 days where you're not doing anything else but participating in the program. Factoring in the lost income and lost time and lost opportunity of those days is also increasing the costs associated with the consequences of the immediate roadside prohibition. And for people who have received any alcohol or drug-related incidents on their driving prohibition in the preceding 5 years. This means 90-day prohibitions for drugs or alcohol, 24-hour prohibitions for drugs or alcohol, 12-hour prohibitions, 3-day prohibitions, 7-day prohibitions, 30-day prohibitions. If it related to drugs or alcohol, then you are going to also have to install an ignition interlock device in your vehicle for a minimum time frame of 6 months. The ignition interlock device, again, is at cost to you. It's about $1,700 for the installation, and on top of that, there are monthly maintenance fees, bringing the total cost for it to approximately $2,500 when all is said and done. And in those $2,500, adding that on to the $3,000, now the immediate roadside prohibition is costing well over $5,000 before even factoring in all of the associated costs of Ubers and taxis and public transit and time that are taken away from people with respect to the 90-day prohibitions. But it's also completely unfair because the system is administered entirely differently if you are not from British Columbia. If your license is from another jurisdiction, whether it's another province, a territory, or another country, you do not have to pay the reinstatement fees. You do not have to pay the short-term license administration fees. It doesn't affect the renewal dates for your license. And you don't have to engage in any responsible driver program or ignition interlock programs. Those are done by regulations in the Motor Vehicle Act that only apply to BC driver's licenses. This means that people from other provinces essentially pay less consequences. It's almost as though it's an invitation to non-British Columbia residents to come and drink and drive in BC because it's basically free. What are you going to do? Get a 90-day prohibition in BC? No problem. Go home. You can continue to drive. You have to pay a $500 fine, assuming you ever come back to British Columbia, assuming you try and get a BC driver's license. But here's the thing, the government doesn't take steps to collect outstanding fines from individuals who owe them. So you are effectively paying no consequences if you get one of these, other than the towing or storage costs, from another province. This is unfair. In Canada, everybody should be treated equally regardless of what province you come from. That is in fact a guaranteed right in the Charter. And yet people in British Columbia are not being treated equally compared to people from other provinces or other countries as a result of this. These are just some of the horrific consequences that you can obtain as a result of getting a 90-day immediate roadside prohibition. It's definitely worth disputing it if you get one to try and avoid this, and the cost of disputing it is far, far, far less than the cost of all of the consequences of the prohibition.